All right, we're going to start in just a couple seconds. Thank you very much. This is our special Buffalo Wild Wings meeting. It'll only take. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of Bloomington City Council to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Lauer,
Here.
Alderman Sage,
Here.
Alderman Malumboy,
Here.
Alderman Burgess,
Here.
Alderman Painter,
Here.
Alderman Schmidt,
Here.
Alderman Black,
Here.
Alderman Hallman,
Here.
Alderman Fruin,
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. Actually, we're going to start with our recognitions and appointments. First of all, we have an appointment of someone who would need no introduction, but he's unable to join us this evening, and that's former Mayor Jesse Smart to the Cultural District Commission, and Emily Vinieri. Emily, are you in the audience to be recognized? Oh, there you are, Emily. And thank you very much for your willingness to serve. And Rodney Smithson to the Property Maintenance Review Board. Rodney? Thank you, Rodney. We very much appreciate all of your willingness to serve. Thank you. At this point, we're going to move to public comment. And public comment, we have up to 3 minutes per person. And if you would like to actually have your problems trying to solve in real time, or actually have a dialogue with myself or perhaps the staff, city manager, deputy city manager usually there. I have a mayor's open house on Fridays from 4:30 to 5:30 before every Monday council meeting. So we just sit around the table, anything's in order, and we can, as I say, sometimes solve problems in real time. In public comment, it's basically a monologue, so you have up to 3 minutes. And we have two people this evening, Bruce Meeks and Patricia Martin. In that order. Bruce.
Well, it's kind of hoping by now maybe you all would have the open data ordinance in front of you and you can read along and follow along. But probably you haven't. You've only had it for 2.5 years and you still will not let a citizen give a presentation in an open and transparent way about open and transparency. Who would have thunk that in the city of Bloomington? Only in Bloomington this could happen. So we'll go back to item D, the right of the people to know what their government and those acting on their behalf of their government are doing. A little bit farther down is where I stopped. Only in rare and unusual circumstances does the public benefit from allowing the business of government to be conducted in secret. And those circumstances should be carefully and narrowly defined to prevent public officials and employees of governing a body from abusing their authority. Item E, public officials and employees of a governing body who attempt to conduct the public's business in secret should be held accountable for their actions. Only a strong, open government and open government data sets with open government data set access ordinance enforced by a strong open government can protect the public's interest in achieving true open government. The website transparency ordinance simply brought together data, about 90% was already on the website, and put it on one page. This is much more far-reaching and much better for our government. The people of Bloomington enact this Chapter 50. That's the number I chose. Mr. Jurgens, Mr. Boyle may choose a different number. To assure that the people of the city remain in control of the government they have created and the data sets created, maintained, and are owned by the people of Bloomington. Private entities, individuals, employees, and officials of Bloomington have rights to privacy, and I fully support that. That must be respected. However, when a person or entity is before a public body, that person and the public has a right to open and public process in accessing the accumulated data sets. Kind of like the detailed budget that none of you have seen that I've got because I did a FOIA request. You might want to do your own FOIA request and get access to the real details of the budget. See you soon.
Patricia Martin. Good evening, Patricia. Hi.
I'd like to mention a few items of interest and concern that I hope to be working on next year. The mental health program I spoke about last week is not just a local program. It started in Australia and is found in 23 countries, also extending across the United States. It covers a broad range of participants ranging from schools and hospitals to churches and law enforcement officers, and Sheriff Sandage, for example, uses it with his correction officers. Moreover, it is recommended by the state of Illinois for such institutions. However, the state itself, as we may realize, does not put money into it, whereas New York, another participant, funds their program with $10 million a year. And so this is one of many reasons why we need to get our budget in order. Another program focusing on the elderly is the Community Care Program, which is also having financial difficulties, and our legislators, too, are trying to work this out. Among its services, it provides home care for the elderly who might otherwise not be able to afford it. And by eliminating this care, those who need it might have to go into nursing homes and at a far greater cost to the state, as many cannot afford it. Also, it is obviously more humane to keep people in their homes and reasonably independent as long as possible. And I have been advocating for this program in Springfield as well. I recommend our local branch highly. It is most receptive to people's needs, and the people are very compassionate. We have a very good local branch. Finally, DeWitt County has a program called Are You OK? Computer generated, it checks up on participants who live alone and can help them too, as was reported in the Panagraph recently when a 104-year-old woman fell and was rescued. I hope we can eventually have such a program here too. I sincerely hope so. Finally, regarding the Parks and Rec situation that was also discussed last week, Miller Park was my park too. My sister and I went there with our parents and grandmother when we were children, walking from our home on West Jefferson Street. And I have photos of the two of us standing in front of the pavilion, rowing on the lake, and using the slides and swing sets. The lower part of the pavilion is now a senior center, but needs more publicity and renovation to function to its full capacity, as Mr. Tetzloff mentioned. It has a lovely lakeside setting with wild birds, an outdoor shuffleboard court. The flamingos are in the zoo nearby, and we didn't have them when I was a child. So I want to offer the park my support as well. And I want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Gladly Yule, especially Scott and Ken Bave. So thank you again for your support.
Thank you, Patricia. Have a good evening. And we move right along to our consent agenda. And
I didn't realize there was a list you had to be added to for public comments. Is it still possible to be heard tonight?
we could entertain a suspension of the rules, but you are supposed to fill out public comment cards beforehand.
I didn't realize.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, made by Alderwoman Schmidt, second by Alderwoman Howman. I think we can do this by voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Okay, come forward, sir, and if you just state your name, and we'll ask you to fill out a comment card afterwards.
Can I bring someone with me because we're just making a
Sure, but you have a collective 3 minutes.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
sure.
My name is Murren King, and this is Julie Hinman.
I would have opted to follow the rules, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Thank you for hearing us tonight. I'm a resident of Bloomington. I've lived here for 5 years, originally from Northern Ireland, but I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm very happy to be so. So we're here tonight just to talk a little bit about sports facilities. PCSL and Fusion are currently using Community Fields. Community Fields is currently scheduled to close down the end of 2017, summer of 2018. I believe there's been approximately right now it's about 3,000 players between youth and adult that are using or that are playing soccer in our community. And right now there's no concrete plan for a new facility. I know that the City of Normal have said that they would allocate money if Bloomington would do the same as well. So, and I know this is something that has been on your radar, but I'd like to ask you guys, can you please give this serious consideration? Please look at this as a real, it's a real need. It's a real need right now. Now, I know there's other people can speak more to this, but it's not possible to go back to the old model because a lot of the different fields and things are no longer there. Certainly, this is the clock is ticking. With us said at the end of 2017, summer of 2018 is going to close. I'll hand over to you, Julie, for a couple minutes.
Yeah, and I've been a lifelong resident of Bloomington Normal, and of course, watched my brothers play at the PCSS field, and as a teacher at Normal West, seen all the kids playing out there, and it's just been fantastic. But it is a little scary that this is really coming to fruition now, and it's about time that we may not have those fields out there. So one of the things that I keep hearing from the kids in school and from the kids that I know is, what are we going to do when this happens? And I think it would be great if, even if it were something that was scalable, it doesn't have to be some huge complex that comes in right away, but even some space for these kids to play would be really nice, because I just keep hearing this articulated over and over again. And, even though my son's ready to graduate and move on, it's still something that's near and dear to my heart. And, when I hear that constantly from kids, just recently had a student who they have to develop their own business in the class that I teach, and 4 of the kids of the 20 I have are all trying to develop a plan for soccer fields. I was like, okay, wow, that says a lot. So, and I just don't know if it's something that we need to go back and, do some research and bring that to you, or, what you're really looking for with that. But if we need to be surveying some of the people that are in the club. But I think it's a kind of a big deal because it's really getting to the end here for us. But we appreciate you listening.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for letting us speak.
Absolutely. Next, we move on to number 7, our consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the council would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Alderman Fruin?
I'd like to pull 7B as in Brave.
7B? Okay.
As in Brave, yep.
Any other items? Alderman Black?
C, please.
7C? Okay. Any other items? Right. Is there a motion then to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of items 7B and C?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Howen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Okay. Any discussion? If not, go ahead and vote. Ayes in favor of the consent agenda as presented, minus the items that were listed. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk, and so we will go to item 7B. Alderman Fruin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two food for thoughts, ideas to share tonight. One of them I will make now. I will make a motion that consent agenda item 7B be approved as presented.
I'll second that.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt.
So I'll just use this opportunity, Mayor. 3 or 4 years ago, we made some changes that we, as a council, myself included, indicated that we wanted to turn over, and so we asked for term limits. My point is that we've had a lot of experience now after 3 or 4 years, whatever that's been, but it seems when we have these one-off situations like we have tonight where we're appointing 2 or 3 at a time, I don't know that we see the big picture. And for further consideration, maybe at a retreat or sometime, maybe it'll give us a chance to reflect on how is this process working. It seems to me, my perception is that notably the Cultural District and the Library Board have had quite a few appointments and people resigning and so forth and so on. I don't know what we can learn from that. I don't know what the situation is, but I think it's always good to review our practices. This is not an advocacy for returning to term limits for boards and commission members. It's just a thought that, when you implement something, it's good to kind of look at it again and see how it's working.
Right.
And maybe part of that is, I think I've suggested in the past, maybe others have, that it's interesting we have a group for the cultural district, but we don't have a group for the Coliseum. Right or wrong, why not? So maybe it fits in the retreat discussion, maybe it doesn't get much council interest, but I want to use this opportunity to kind of suggest, let's think about why we do what we do. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. One of the things that I did plan on my essentially my fourth State of the City address in January is to compare some of the really dramatic demographic changes that we've had in our boards and commissions over the last 4 years in terms of 20 and 30 and 40-somethings millennials, people from east side, west side, some things that we've talked about before, and varying age groups. And that there's no quota system. It's just we certainly have a broader pool of people who are now on boards and commissions, and I think we'll make and have been making better decisions because of it. So absolutely. Thank you. At this point, was that a motion? Did you make a motion? And, oh, that's right, and you seconded it. So now this would be to approve item 7B as presented. Thank you. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you. We move on to item 7C. Alderman Black, I believe you pulled that.
Thank you. I made this remark last year, and I don't know what I need to do to, I guess, get some traction on this, and maybe I'm the only one. We talk a lot about collaboration, intergovernmental partnership, and as we lay out our calendar for 2017, I'm looking at a memo here from the clerk breaking down the other government entities in the area here, when their meetings are. And to me, we need to be putting on the calendar regularly scheduled meetings, either with our partners in Normal or in the county or both, and just put them out there. There are plenty of issues that we can be discussing, partnering on. And I know that Jim has thrown it out there. Others have talked about the fifth Monday of the month. I don't know if that's something that they would be interested in entertaining, but it's more than just a conversation here, a lunch there. I think it needs to be institutionalized, and I think it'd be good for our community to have that partnership, that visual collaboration, but also really discuss some of these critical issues that face both of our communities. And then just so the public will know that it's happening, we know that it's happening, we can prepare for it and go from there. So I'm not saying that I'm not going to try to put this on the calendar now, but I hope that staff can reach out and maybe in early 2017 we get an addendum or something where we can mark out those dates on the calendar all for 2017.
And it could be anything from economic development to soccer.
I'll give you 5, off the top of my head right now. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve as presented with the hope that we move towards actually getting dates on the calendar with our governmental partners and go from there.
I will second that, and I would also suggest that maybe to keep us honest, you might fill out an alderman's request form with specific dates.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay. At this point, an aye vote is in favor as presented.
I second
Yeah.
it, and then I know.
Motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. And now we move right along to our regular agenda, consideration of an ordinance approving an economic incentive agreement to support the retention and expansion of the Kroger Company in the city of Bloomington. And we have a brief presentation and brief council discussion. Actually, these are budgeted at 5 minutes apiece. That might be a little tight, but let's go.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to present to you this opportunity to again reaffirm our partnership with the Kroger Corporation as they look to develop a Kroger Marketplace store at the corner of College and Hershey here in Bloomington. This agreement or a similar agreement in this similar form was presented to you back in February and was approved. Unfortunately, due to a variety of macroeconomic conditions beyond Kroger's control, they had to delay the groundbreaking of this store here in Bloomington, but they have continued to express great commitment to this site and to this project and have been busy working behind the scenes to see that this project moves forward, and staff has continued to work with them and support them on this project. Again, the proposal is a 128,000 square foot Kroger Marketplace store. This is their newest concept, and they're in the process of rolling these out across the nation and markets where it makes financial sense for them to do so. One of the neat, again, items that this store will feature is this new click list drive-up service where customers can order their groceries online and within an hour come to the side of the store and a Kroger employee will bring it out and load it into their car. As you can see, the site plan has changed slightly from what was previously presented. Instead of Kroger acquiring over this 14 or so acres as was originally proposed, which would have had the private drive that you see here that will be constructed between College and Jumer, this private drive will stay on property that will continue to be owned by the current landowner. So in effect, Kroger will be acquiring less acres of land, but Kroger will still be responsible for constructing all of the site improvements that are required in order to develop the property. Staff sees this development as a positive. Number one, it's a private drive still as it was before, which means that's a road that the city doesn't have to maintain or plow, which is great. We like those. And number two, the flexibility of the road being retained by the current landowner and in its condition and configuration will allow the current landowner ultimate flexibility with the development of what will basically be about 16 acres to the west. And ever since news broke of this proposed development here, I've received numerous phone calls from national developers wanting to know when's this going to happen and who do I call in order to learn more about that property. So by way of Kroger's development here, will facilitate the development of the rest of this property, which has been targeted as a Tier 1 development site for infill development, as was outlined in our already approved comprehensive plan. The proposed incentive has actually decreased somewhat because Kroger's investment in the property has decreased. Our proposed incentive is to provide up to 10% of the development costs, of the actual costs. So again, if Kroger is able to somehow squeeze some more pennies out of this project, the incentive that we would provide would also be reduced. The incentive is limited to the 1% sales tax. All other taxes generated on the property, including property tax that would benefit the city or property tax that would benefit Unit 5 schools or any other of the other taxing entities that are represented on this site, those would all go back to their respective taxing districts or to the city. No interest is being offered here to the developer. It's just a straight 10% of the project costs. And again, the incentive is necessary for Kroger to make this site competitive amongst all the different sites that they could potentially invest in across the nation. The opportunity that I've had to get to know this company and the people that we've worked with that represent them continues to reaffirm my belief that this is a great company to partner with, and just hope that everything goes well with the project and that it can proceed. We do have Brianna Cotton, a real estate specialist out of Kroger's Indianapolis office here if you have any questions for her, but I'd also be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions of Mr. Grammer? You're pulling that forward. Alderman Fruin.
Thank you. One out of curiosity and one more serious, but the private drive, as we've heard over the years, people wanting to turn private drives back to the city at some point. Is the private drive being constructed according to city street standards? And is the private drive going to be adaptable or usable by fire?
The fire department has reviewed these plans and determined that they are compliant with their needs. As to the site being developed to city standards, I'll let Brianna answer that question.
Hello. That was not our intent to build to the city street standards. It's our intent to keep the private road as a private road. We'll have an agreement with Shirks between the two of us to keep it so. I hope that answers your question.
That helps. I don't know how the rest of us feel about this, but as a matter of past history, we've had private streets that weren't built to the same standard that public streets have been, and maybe they have deteriorated, or that subdivision has asked that the city take those on. And so I know you don't know about that history, but maybe my friend David can help answer that as to whether this should be built according to the same standards we have for the rest of the streets.
I would just say that most of the requests to convert a private to a public street has come from the residential sector, residential subdivisions, which I think are much more likely to make that request, at least since this is all commercial, and there will be commercial to the west, and because they look at things like easements, cross-through, let's see, I'm trying to think, Brianna, what's that term when you go back and forth?
Cross-access easement?
Cross-access easements. Those are going to be things that they will negotiate. Hopefully, because it is not to city standards, when the city and the engineers do look at the plans and specifications for site improvements, that would be a time where they would want to look and make sure that not only the private drive, but also the driving lanes around the store are built to a standard to take semis, because you've got the same interest too, semis coming around the store as well, don't you?
Yeah, if I might add a couple things. You're completely correct. Our semis will be coming in through this private drive, so we'll be building it to Kroger standards, which include heavy-duty asphalt. Kroger is also, although the private drive will technically be owned by the Shirks, Kroger has taken on the responsibility of building it and maintaining it into the future, because it's our main access into our shopping center, and so we really wanted to control having access to our store. So because of that, we have an economic interest in keeping it up up to a certain standard and snow removed and everything like that. So
I appreciate that, and I don't need to belabor it, but so the what-if scenario is what happens if Kroger leaves after 5 or 10 years? Who gets the responsibility to take care of the road?
it'll be in our recorded cross-access and restriction easement, and so the person or the entity that takes ownership of our property at this point will be our successor in interest, and they will then be responsible for the road maintenance and repair.
Thank you. My last comment out of curiosity is McDonald's went to 2 lanes. Is the pickup 1 lane or 2 lanes?
Oh, it is, I believe there's actually, are you talking for the click list?
Yeah.
There's actually 5 spots.
Sweet. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay. Alderwoman Burgess, and then we're getting to the end.
Sure. I have a question for Austin. And this is a bigger picture question about this and the other incentive package we're being asked to look at tonight, because we've considered a lot of these in the last 2 years since I've been on council, and I find that very encouraging as a sign that our local economy is doing very well and that businesses both want to come here to invest as well as to expand their businesses here, and all of those things are very positive. But I get a lot of questions about how the city decides who to offer incentives to and what level those incentives are. Could you just maybe give us briefly an idea of how this process works in terms of how people approach the city and how the city determines what is appropriate for us to consider offering?
Sure. Well, typically, a developer or existing business owner will get in touch with me or the city manager when they run into a problem like significantly high development costs, and wonder, is there some type of way to overcome these costs? Have they been crunching the numbers correctly? Oftentimes, some of the costs are just inherent from a development specifically related to costs that are paid to the city, be they sewer or water tap-on fees or different regulations that are imposed by the city that then the city also is required to impose because of federal regulations or state regulations. So then when that developer makes that request, we meet with them and we determine and try to get to know them and get to know what their project is, and then compare that proposed project to the city's own goals and priorities, and often look at of course, our great comprehensive plan that was just recently approved about a year ago, and actually the same night that I believe, or very close to this time when this project came around. And then we also look at our existing economic development incentive guidelines and policies to determine, are there perhaps revenues that are generated by that project that can be potentially rebated or financed in some way to help overcome those extraordinary costs. And so, again, if the project fits with the goals of the city that have been approved and written down and enforced and reinforced by the city council, those are the things that guide both myself and the city manager and other staff in working with developers.
And just a really quick one, this particular incentive package, in terms of that spectrum of risk that we've talked about before, is this a high-risk incentive package or a low-risk incentive package to the city?
This is a very low-risk incentive package. This is a pay-as-you-go rebate, and it is rebates of revenues only if they occur, and rebates of revenues that are limited to this property. The city is not putting any of its own general obligation, bonding, or anything like that. It's just pay-as-you-go rebates, and only if those occur. The rebate is set up that it's the lesser of 10% of the project costs, and then set up to be over 10 years. If by year 10, the full amount of the incentive that is capped has not been paid, tough luck. It's the benefit to the city. So.
Okay. Anything else?
Just like to reiterate for the public that this is just a reconfiguration of the former or the prior agreement, correct?
That's correct.
And it incorporates a few new features such as the private drive, and that's why we had to reapprove this. Is that?
That's right.
Okay.
The biggest changes as outlined in the table that's in the memo is that the timeline has shifted.
Right.
So if we were to say, we can no longer really enforce the existing agreement,
Right.
because they're not going to be able to meet the timeline that was outlined in that agreement. And again, in order to protect the city, we have a timeline. If things change and you don't meet the milestones, well, it gives us an opportunity to take a second look at it. Right. The legal description of the properties has changed. So again, the old agreement no longer valid because what they're going to be buying has physically changed. And then also the amount of the investment has been reduced. And so therefore, at the outset of this new agreement, the cap on the investment has correspondingly been reduced.
Right. One other thing I'd like to cover for the general public so they understand, I think I already pretty well do. Much of this is new growth. The footprint of this facility is much larger than the current facility that they are in normal, and this will also stimulate additional sales and growth in the corresponding area, neighborhood, et cetera, right?
Yes, I believe so. That their current store, they actually started at the far west end of that strip mall in a very small store, outgrew that, built the store adjacent to it. Unfortunately, with this new design, that piece of land that they're on, they're landlocked. They cannot expand there. They would like to move down the street to this spot where there is development land available. However, there are extraordinary costs involved that make this site cost prohibitive, and that is why they have come to us. So.
And I would hope that neighboring properties would see the benefit in being close to this anchor store, and they wouldn't come to us for additional incentives to get started.
Pardon?
I'm hoping that we can attract additional satellite businesses to this area, this neighborhood, this shopping center, without additional incentives.
Without it, yes.
That's correct.
That would be my hope. Again, with the construction of the private drive, I mean, it's significant cost to add on an additional arm to the stoplight up at College that will allow the traffic to flow. There'll be a right turn lane added onto the western portion of the property. So again, that's really going to set the western portion of the property up to be developed, and will be an additional one of my top priorities to market that site in conjunction with the current landowners.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right. At this point, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Painter. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Okay. An aye vote, of course, is in favor of The motion is presented. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you, and thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to go further. You're not going anywhere.
Nope.
Right. Item 8B, consideration of an ordinance approving an economic incentive agreement to support the retention expansion of Sam Lemon Toyota in the city of Bloomington. And you have a brief presentation, then we have a brief council discussion.
Mayor, I just wanted to make a few brief comments, and I'll turn it back to Austin. I think it's very appropriate to mention what a great community partner Sam Lehman has been over the years. In fact, I think many of you have witnessed a number of these automotive dealerships reinvesting in their property since the Great Recession. And that's been the case with Sam Lehman, with their Chevy dealership and others, which has been to our gain. It certainly has enhanced property values, but we certainly have been seeing the growth of a auto mecca or auto row of dealerships down on the south end of the Veterans Parkway. To this point in time, all this investment has been made without any incentives by the city of Bloomington. Recently, as we've all heard, Bob Dennison decided to retire, put his dealerships up for sale, and Sam Lehman came in and purchased both those. Sam Lehman had an opportunity to decide what to do, especially with the Toyota dealership, because this particular dealership, and maybe it's because I bought a few vehicles down there, that is very, very small, much, much smaller than you typically would find for a Toyota dealership. They had a choice as to where they might relocate this new addition to their family of dealerships. And one of the things they did is come in and talk to Austin and I about wanting to possibly stay here in the city of Bloomington, which was not a necessity. They could have also looked at moving this elsewhere. But they had an opportunity to move to the south side of Veterans Parkway and actually purchase this property from the so-called Brantville and even build a much greater and enhanced property for Toyota sales as well as service. So if anything, we just saw that this was a great opportunity to partner with them. And as Austin's going to get in, there has been some very significant development costs associated with this property. They center around stormwater. And I do want to just remind you that as you look at this area south of Veterans and on east and west of Morrissey, this has been an area that we know we struggle with trying to provide good stormwater drainage. We've looked for the need for a stormwater detention basin somewhere in this area. We know that we've had flooding to the east over there by the Harley-Davidson and some areas. And there's also some challenges to the west. It's a very flat area of the city. The city's stormwater detention policy does require that this be addressed in the development of the property, and so that they're not necessarily adding to and even further adding to the problem of poor drainage in an area. They also ran into a utility line that needs to be relocated. So being that as it is, what we have done is looked for a way, how can we assist them? But as Austin has said, this is a very low risk, pay-as-you-go sort of arrangement. With that introduction, and again, just to indicate that we have a great opportunity to help Sam Lehman maintain a critical dealership, one that really needs to grow, needs more area to put product, and will in turn benefit both consumers and the city as well in the area of sales tax. So with that, Austin, would you just kind of further elaborate on what the stormwater requirements are and what is the proposal we're bringing to the council with a recommendation to approve in the way of an incentive to help with these extraordinary costs of development of this property?
Sure. Well, one of the main issue here is the need for underground stormwater detention. And I have here a case study about another car dealership that was faced with a similar issue, although a much smaller requirement for underground stormwater detention. But basically, you can see that you can construct a series of pipes or boxes underground and then catch and retain the stormwater that falls on the property, and then it can then be released slowly over time so it doesn't create a significant burden on the properties downstream. The city staff in the engineering and public works department has worked closely with the engineer retained by the Layman's to determine that 72,000 cubic feet of underground stormwater detention is necessary for this site. That's the equivalent of 538,000 gallons of rainwater, or to put it in a slightly more easy to understand capacity, 9,792 55-gallon rain barrels. So imagine having that many rain barrels around your car dealership. You wouldn't have much room to display cars. And as is pointed out in this case study, this dealer said, well, we know that we needed an underground stormwater detention system because every parking spot at a dealership is worth money. And it's worth money also to the city as well because car dealers are a significant source of sales tax revenue. The 1% sales tax that's applied to cars definitely goes a long way in supporting police, fire, public works, road, construction, BCPA, you name the list. It goes into the general fund and then you guys distribute it as you see fit. So in order to help put more funds into the general fund on the front end, we need to make it a priority to partner with retailers such as car dealerships to ensure that we have that consistent flow of revenue to meet the city's needs and services. So as you can see, it will be somewhat similar to this. You won't see it. It won't necessarily add, well, it'll add some value to the property, but not in an appreciable way like a building would. It's a necessary requirement. Unfortunately, on this site, the site space is challenged. If they had ample acres, they could do a above-ground detention basin that they would just mow and have much less upfront costs. But unfortunately, due to the size of the site, it just won't work. But the location of this site is critical for them, as it is for the city, because it helps build additional capacity in the car dealership area and drives more car shoppers to that part of the city, which will benefit all of the dealerships in that area. Car dealers are, again, a tremendous impact on the local economy, and the average wage at a car dealer in Illinois, according to the National Automotive Dealers Association, is over $50,000. So these are good paying jobs, often head of household jobs that provide for many families in our community. Another benefit to this development is that it will provide some additional stormwater detention capacity for the rest of the Morrissey Crossing development. Staff has been in discussions with the property owners here over the last 2 years about how can this mostly vacant strip center be revitalized and reinvigorated. And one of their ideas is to build a small development, a retail development on the northern portion of the property. But of course, as you displace land, you then create an additional burden for stormwater detention. So the proposed Layman detention underground basin system will be oversized, not only to account for their detention requirements, but also for a portion of the Morrissey Crossing detention. So that will have a benefit not only for the Layman property, but also for the Morrissey Crossing property, which, as outlined in our economic development goals and incentive policies, we look for not just what can this incentive benefit just on this property, but what can there be other benefit achieved in the city as well. The incentive is structured primarily just to target this extraordinary cost of the underground detention and the relocation of the sewer, estimated to be around $700,000. It's targeted just to the 1% sales tax, rebating 50% of that, and it is limited to 10 years and only limited to this dealership. Although the Laymans do have ownership of other dealerships, this incentive is only limited to the Toyota dealership. We do have Tim Layman, who's co-owner of the Layman Auto Group, and also Todd Breaker, CFO of the Layman Auto Group, in the audience tonight. And if you had any questions for them, I'd also be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Questions, starting with Kevin.
Yes. Right off the bat, I certainly commend the Laymans. I'm encouraged by their willingness to grow and invest in our community, and I welcome them. I'm concerned, however, because we've had a long history of um, infrastructure issues in this area with drainage. As a matter of fact, it's an ongoing issue, and this is just a very small Band-Aid on that whole area. It includes and incorporates and stretches far beyond the Morrissey Crossing area. Actually, we've got drainage issues clear across the Veterans Parkway all the way into Lafayette and Bunn, et cetera. And I think the city needs a long-term plan for this area. I've said that for a long time. I'm pushing to get Lafayette on the map here, and I think we're starting to get there. But I think we need, for further development and for the ease of economic development into the future, I think we need a plan as to what we're going to do with most of this property. And so one of the issues I've got, how long will this type of drainage system last us? Is this a 50-year issue? Is this something that we're going to have to redo in 20 years?
Well, this underground detention basin will be on layman's property and will be their responsibility to maintain. There are maintenance costs and maintenance program that is required of these, so there will be additional ongoing costs for the layman's as opposed to potentially a above ground surface basin, which of course needs to be mowed but also would need to be maintained. But this may have some additional ongoing costs for them, which is one of the reasons for their hesitancy to pursue this project without assistance. I believe in my research of these underground detention systems, I've seen that they can last anywhere from 50 to 75 to 100 years. It depends upon the type of material and of course the maintenance that's required, and if that is kept up.
And so they're going to own this, and really we won't have any ownership or any ongoing expense as municipality.
That's correct. It's
until
on their
they would
private
change it again.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Black.
Thank you. Thank you, Austin. I appreciate that. Sometimes it's tough because I use this in a PDF. It's page 171 of my PDF. It's the sixth page of the economic agreement. I just really wanted to highlight some of the questions that we get on these sort of incentive packages. What happens if the operation ceases for a number of reasons? And these are the types of things that we see kind of protecting the city and these sorts of investments. And it just makes a lot of sense to highlight that to the public so that they see that this is not necessarily a blank check or anything like that. And that comes the diligence of your work with the developer, and I've really been impressed over the few years that you've been here, really getting into the details with the numbers and working it out and explaining it in a way that I think the public can consume in a more reasonable manner, because I know that there's been a lot of talk lately in the community about economic incentive packages, and I always just love how your work answers those questions before they're even asked. And so I want to just highlight that here and thank you for the hard work that you've been doing.
Thank you. Yes, as you alluded, the agreement includes a clawback provision such that if during the term of the agreement, if Layman's were to no longer operate this dealership at the site, that they would be required through the first 5 years of the agreement to repay the city 100% of the incentive that had been paid, and in the later 5 years it would step down from there. In the development of this agreement with our attorney Kathy Fieldor, we reviewed a number of other existing incentive agreements that other municipalities have entered into with car dealers in order to make sure that we were incorporating good standards and practices that other municipalities have used in these types of agreements.
It shows, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay. So is there a motion then?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Boca.
Thank you. Austin, thank you for all the fantastic work you've been doing. I know several years ago when we approved the position of Economic Development Coordinator, I don't think we had anticipated that you would be this busy. So we're very thankful for that, and I think it showed great foresight, not just on my part, but on others as well. Pat myself on the back. I was also impressed by the magnitude of jobs, that this is going to create, So could you give us a sense of where it ranks in terms of, dealerships in the area? Because that seems to be like a pretty large number of people that they're going to be hiring full-time.
Yes, definitely there would be an increase in service positions. We might want to reach out to Todd. Todd, you want to come on up? I'll put you on the spotlight here. How does this employment that you have projected here compared to other employment at your other dealerships here locally, I guess?
Yeah, our hope, of course, when we bought the Denison dealership, in particular the Toyota dealership, which we're speaking of here, that this store will have sales and similar to our Chevy City, which is across the street from where this development's going. So kind of in relative terms, in terms of volume of cars sold, service rendered, and service on those cars would be very similar to our Chevy City store. So that's kind of put it in perspective. Chevy City is a larger building, but we're kind of limited with this site here in terms of the size of the building. And with our other facilities in the area, we feel like we have plenty of access to where, to the extent we need extra service bays, we have plenty of them in the area to accommodate any growth that would
Along the lines of that, I think, what would the increment be roughly between what the previous Denison Toyota?
In terms of employment, we'll probably add somewhere around 30 to 35 new positions.
Okay.
And they'll both be in sales and service.
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you for the answer. And I also wanted to mention it in terms of the efforts that Austin has been making. I think at some point, when we're talking about jobs, it might be good to have a nice little recap, of all the efforts that we've made over the years and all the improvements in this area. So, thank you.
Great. Okay. Now, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion. It's my ward.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve as requested.
Moved by Alderman Lauer, second by Alderwoman Schmidt, and we'll go ahead and vote. The motion carries 9-0. No nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, if I could, I just would be remiss if I didn't pass a tremendous amount of thanks on to City Planner Katie Simpson and City Engineers Kevin Cothe, Ryan Otto, Tony Meiselas, and Richard Bernard in the Water Department that have done a tremendous amount of work on both the Kroger project and the Lehman project and working with the developers to help see these really come together. It's a real whole staff process to help these developers, help their engineering teams get all these questions answered in order to bring about a deliverable product. So big thanks to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. And next, we go to the presentation and discussion. And this is a Bloomington's Facility Management Draft 5-Year Capital Improvement Plan. And we start with Mr. Rasmussen and Russell Waller.
Okay, thank you very much, and I apologize ahead of time. This one won't be as simple as the one I gave a couple of minutes ago. And the reason for that is that we have a lot of difficulty in facilities management because it's a major part of our infrastructure in the city. And what I want to do is give you just an idea of where I'm going to end up here in about 15 minutes. And what it is we only maintain our property to about 25% of what would be good or fair condition. 75% of our property is in the poor or critical condition. The amount of money that we put into this each year is only about 40% of what is necessary to maintain that already low level of maintenance. And what I'm going to do here in the next few minutes is give you some of the evidence that will support that thesis and then summarize with what it is the city would really need to do in a 5-year capital improvement plan, just kind of to keep level with where we are. So the first thing I want to do then is show the programs that facilities manage. And these 5 that you see there, facilities maintenance, Government Center, parking, the Abraham Lincoln, the Coliseum, are basically the 5 budgetary categories that these things are in. We have totally in the city 175 pieces of property we maintain. They're not all buildings. Some of them are pump stations and little things. And we have 118 pieces of property that are actually structures. Of those, 35 are major structures that we partner with other people. Facilities will do some work in a building that the Parks also maintains. And those 35 major structures are the ones I'm going to talk about now, because that's where most of the facilities management money goes into. And then what I will do is I will go back and say what you see on this slide. There are 13 buildings that facilities management manages entirely, and those come up under the first category of facilities maintenance. To give you an idea of how that works, we have those 13 buildings take up nearly 1 million square feet. The standard of the industry is that you have one FTE for every 50,000 square feet of property that you manage. So for about 1 million square feet of property, we should probably have 18 FTEs. And what facilities management, Russ Walker and Josh do down there, is they do this management of 900,000 square feet with 5 people. So they're already considerably low in the number of people that would normally be maintaining property. And I just give you that because it gives you an idea of what they're faced with as we go through this. I'm going to go through each one of these briefly. The first one is a facilities maintenance, and there are a number of projects in here that you will see appearing in the 5-year capital plan. The first one is, and these come from the Faithful and Gould study from, I think, 2013. But you can see there in the upper left-hand picture, that's some of the police department window leaks. There are 63 windows in that building that we have to maintain, and we've been redoing these each year. This one, just as an example, we've done 20 of those windows, and there's 43 left to do. It's about $100,000 worth of replacing all of those, and that's one of those projects that you see in our 5-year capital improvement plan. And this is just to give you an idea of the kind of structures that are being maintained. Here's another one we're working on. You all have had an opportunity to talk about this. This is the police department training facility, and major leaks have caused this kind of deterioration. Some of that is being done right now. Some of the design is being done out of this year's budget. There's probably about $200,000 worth of construction that has to be done out of there that will be proposed in next year's budget. These are in the facilities area. This is the police department power backup system. What these is, you see is batteries there, so that if all of a sudden everything went out, the police department does have a continuous source of power. This has to be replaced every few years, and so what we're doing is we're working on police department power backups, which I'll speak some more about, and also then heating and air conditioning work that also remains there. Here's an interesting slide. This is the boiler projects that we're doing. There's probably about $250,000 in boilers that need to be done. In this last year, we've replaced 2 of them. One is in the water treatment plant annex. Another was in police department admin. We have 2 more that need to be done. The one you see up in the top slide there is a recent replacement at the water treatment plant. The bottom slide that you see there is one that needs to be replaced. That's a 100-year-old boiler in the Lincoln Leisure Center. That one and the water treatment plant main building each need to replace. Those are about $125,000 a piece. And you'll see these as how these numbers add up when I do a summary here at the end. In this very building, right under where you're sitting right now, is this emergency generator up on the left-hand side, the yellow one. We've had a couple of problems with it already. It was built when the building was built and probably needs to be replaced or upgraded. That's about $50,000, as also the emergency generator in the police department. Down on the bottom picture, you see the heating and air conditioning unit that's on top of this building. That will need to be replaced sometime soon, as well as police department admin, public works admin. When this goes down and it reaches the point it needs to replace, that unit, which is right above you here, is about $250,000 as well. I also wanted to then just briefly talk a little bit about new construction. And this is the one that is the big item in here. You remember when we talked about Parks' 5-year program, the big item there was the new swimming pool, which was about $10,000 worth. The big item in this budget is the new Public Works Operational Center. And we put in the budget here where it says $50 million, but who knows what that will be. You have to find the land and move and do the design, but we're 30 or 40 or 50 million dollars as a chunk in there, and that probably would have to be funded by a separate bond issue. But right now, it costs us more to maintain those facilities here south of this building than it would be to replace them. And I'll show you how that works also in a minute. The government center is actually our best maintained piece of property. What happens there is we spend $350,000 a year as part of our contract, and the county, we share that with the county. Just to give you an idea of how that works, the amount of money that we spend on facilities maintenance comes down to about $3 a square foot per year. On the government center, we share this with the county. We spend $6 a square foot. So because of the contract that we have with the Public Building Commission, we actually maintain the government center twice as well as we maintain our other facilities. Some of the things, however, will need to be replaced outside of that contract. In the lower right-hand side there, I've shown you a picture of the roof on the government center, and that is beginning to leak badly, and we're going to have to replace that in the near term, and that is a separate item that we'll have to fund. I want to go on to the next item, which is parking operations, and I wanted to give you a quick view of what this looks like, because in this picture you can see some pictures of the Market Street garage down on the bottom 2 slides. Those 2 things are major structural issues, and those things are going to have to be worked on in the near future. Right now we estimate we need to put about $200,000 into the Market Street garage right now to get it back up in shape. The Lincoln deck is an enterprise fund. It's the only enterprise fund that facilities maintains. It only operates at about 80% profitability, so it's about 20% short. One of the ways that can be fixed is by putting in automated control updates that run 24 hours a day, kind of like our sister city does. Right now, we only charge for parking when we have parking attendants there. The problem is that's a big upfront cost, maybe $450,000 to put that in, but would pay for itself over time because you would end up being able to charge 24 hours a day for the facility without the use of any people there. In the meantime, of course, what we're doing a lot of work to maintain the building. You can see some pictures in the bottom there. On the bottom right-hand side is the stairway that we recently redid in concrete. The middle line is the water, the fire protection system, which split on us here not long ago. We had to do an emergency repair on those. So those are the kind of things that we have to keep working on the Abraham Lincoln deck. So we maintain it, but at something of a loss right now. I want to go to the Coliseum. The Coliseum right now, we have an agreement with them about what we maintain and what Venue Works will maintain. I met with Lynn Canyon this morning a little bit about that, and we went over it. Lynn Cannon is the new executive director there, and we went over that maintenance agreement, so we understand how that works now, and it's much better than what we had before. Russ Waller did a good job in negotiating an agreement on that. Nonetheless, there's a lot of maintenance that has to be done in the Coliseum. The big one right now is bringing it up to ADA compliance. I know some of you know that. Parts of that is the new exterior elevator that we talked about before. It's built exterior to the structure, but the entrance is on interior. And when you put a major structure on that after the fact, it's very expensive. But we have about $750,000 worth of ADA requirements that we're required to fix on the Coliseum, which we don't have budgeted at this time. I wanted to show you a couple of other things that we need to do in the Coliseum.
One of them is the emergency generator, which you see up on the top left-hand side. That's a big generator. It's about $250,000 and will have to be replaced sometime. The ice plant is in the middle. That also needs updating. And the big item is on the bottom. That's a heating and air conditioning unit for the entire Coliseum. There are two of them there, and they're $1.5 million a piece. So at the time that they begin to go bad, and they're going bad now, it will be a major item to repair those. So I wanted to now, having given you an item, a little rundown of all these different things that need to be repaired, I wanted to show you how this works in a graphic kind of way. What happens is the Installation Facilities Management Association, IFMA, use this standard way of tracking whether you're in good, fair, poor, or critical range. And what happens is the number is derived by taking the renewal or the repair cost and you divide it by the replacement cost. So at some point it gets more expensive to maintain something than it is to repair it. So you're in the good range if that number comes out 5%, and you're in the fair range if it comes out 5 to 10%. You're down in the critical range if you spend 1/3 of the cost of replacing it every year to maintain it. At that point, it's not worth maintaining. It's outlived its useful life, and you need to replace it. That's the way we derive that. And now I wanted to show you these 35 major facilities that I've been talking about. And you see we only have 3 that are in the good range, 6 that are in the fair range, 21 poor, and 5 critical. If you add that up, what it means is we've got 26 that are poor or critical, and only 9 that are in the good or fair range. And that's why I come back to saying that we only have about 25% of our facilities that are in fair or good conditions. 75% of our facilities are in poor or critical and need replacing or updating soon. Now this eye chart that you've got here is actually the actual page out of our facilities page of the 5-year capital improvement plan, but I've shown you down at the bottom what that amounts to, and that is this year we have $945,000 funded for maintaining these facilities against a total amount unfunded over the 5 years of $61 million. Now, the reason that looks like such a huge difference is because included up there, about halfway up on the eye chart, is the new Public Works facility for $50 million. So if you take $50 million out of that, that number is more like $12 million. Still in all, we've summarized this, and it looks kind of like this. The numbers that we are proposing for these 35 facilities that I've just gone over amounts to about this much in each year. So in 2017, it was $1.9 million, and 2018, $2.7 million. And that's not including the Operations Center, which we would include somewhere else. So if you took this total down at the bottom right-hand side and you added the $50 million to it, that's how you get $62 million. But excluding that, just to maintain where we are requires about $12 million over 5 years. And what that means is it's an average of about $2.5 million each year. And what we put into it is $9.5 million. So what we're doing is we're putting about $1 million a year into a maintenance project that costs $2.5 million. And that's just to stay where we are, not to get any better. So what happens is our goal would be to try to raise that $1 million a year to $2.5 million a year to try and keep the facilities where they are and try to improve them. And so what I've done here is I've tried to give you some of this data to support the thesis that we're only really maintaining our property at about 40% of what we need to. And as we look at the capital improvement plan over the next 5 years and look at how much money we need to put into each of these things, and there are critical things in parks and there are critical things in streets and sewers,
there is also critical needs in our building maintenance, and it's critical to the point of about $1.5 million short each year. That concludes my presentation on the capital improvement plan for facilities, and on that sour note, I'll ask if you have any questions for me.
Questions of Mr. Rasmussen? Comments? Alderwoman Schmidt?
I was interested to hear you talk about the 100-year-old boiler in the Lincoln Leisure Center, and wondered about, thinking about that, say, as a juxtaposed with the police windows, which, to me seem way more critical. How are you sort of triaging this as we think about this? And, I think we've talked from time to time about divesting ourselves of property as well, or maybe rethinking our parking plans, and, how do we dive into some of those other kinds of policy issues with
Yeah.
this?
I'll go back to this slide, and what it is what we have to do is look at those ones that are in the critical level there, and those are the ones that we will look at first because it costs us the most money to maintain. The ones we have in the critical category are like maintaining your car by saving money by not changing the oil. Well, that's what we're doing with these things. We're just creeping by with them, and very soon they will not be usable anymore. So,
which are those 5? Could you do you
oh,
have?
well, sure. The one that is absolutely critical is the public works facilities. The buildings down there have long outlived their usefulness. That's the biggest one, and I'd have to come back and do a more. I can answer that question better if I go back and have some time to study, but I will do that so I can name the exact facilities for you. We should do that.
In terms of this bigger picture, of thinking about, do we really want to put all that money, for example, into a new boiler at Lincoln Leisure Center? How are we using that, and how critical is that to our plan, to our
Right.
city comprehensive plan?
Yes, those are the
I
questions.
don't have a good idea about how that all fits together.
Those are the questions that we have to deal with, and as we get to each one of these years, we should bring that back to you as a separate presentation, and we will do that. For example, the windows in the police department. Well, you can't keep letting those go because every year it just gets worse and worse, and it begins to deteriorate the rest of the building. So how much you put in that versus do you want to put $100,000 into a new boiler in the Lincoln Leisure Center when maybe that building should maybe not be continued to be used, and maybe we do something else there. Those are those very difficult decisions that we'll have to make. And as we dive deeper into the 5-year capital improvement plan, we'll have to look at each one of those different issues because there won't be enough money to go around, and we'll have to decide which those are, and we'll have a recommendation for you on those items.
Mayor, if I could, I just help answer that question too. As we look at the Lincoln Leisure Center, the other thing we need to look strongly at is should we even maybe get out from under that building? And I just want to share with you as an example, there's been recent discussions in the last year or two about some sort of joint facility. It doesn't have to always be the city going its own way and putting up a recreational center. What about collaborating with others? Even the aquatic center, could be as we look at that, if there is a replacement for O'Neill. What about combining that with a larger facility that could replace Lincoln Leisure Center and save us that cost of not only the boiler, but it doesn't have air conditioning in that facility. The parking lot is gone. So I think that needs its own analysis of, and one thing that we've mentioned in the past we're really behind the 8 ball on is we really need to update that parks master plan. It's been in the mid-90s, I think, since the last comprehensive update. We've had some minor updates, but we need to look at how do we replace and also build for the future on some of these facilities. So I do want you to know that we will be strongly looking at what's that next generation of facility needs that we need, and how can we look at not just having it the city, but maybe a jointly owned, operated, or some sort of facility like that.
Alderman Lauer and Milawambwe and Black.
Well, I don't want to belabor this, but thank you, Karen. I appreciate your points there, and I guess I'm asking for in the future because I don't think you can answer this now, but help us to compare and contrast at some point what these things are costing us on an annual basis going forward without uh, improvements, and help us to weigh the importance of some of these items. Um, I'm interested in saving money over the long term, and I realize that there's some short-term investments that will need to be made, and so which ones are going to be most financially um, probably positive to the city long term. Um, Maybe we can nip some of these things in the bud, keep them from deteriorating in the short term, and then save ourselves some money decades down the road. Thanks.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely the crux of the problem, and that'll be our next step. We'll come back to you with that.
Alderman Milawambwe.
Okay, thank you. As David brought up collaboration, it makes me think of the operations center that you mentioned. I know we already have a model of collaboration right now with the government center, and I was curious whether or not that's something that we could collaborate on with other public entities in the area. Sure. There's a lot of merit to that. If that could be done with the county, perhaps, or with Normal. Normal has a fairly new facility that they built, and it may, and it's not far from where we are. There's some possibility of that. I think it certainly is worth exploring, and we'll answer that question as well. Okay, good. And to go more specifically, I know boilers are really exciting, but I was focusing more on the city facility space utilization, and I can see where people might take a look at that. I'm looking at the price tag here over the 5 years is $350,000, and to some people it might not seem like something that we should do, for 350 space utilization study. So can you explain that a little bit more? I'm sure there's a science to it. But
Were you talking about the $350,000 that we pay in the government center?
No. I'm talking about there's a page here, just a little more specific to, so it's the city facility space utilization. That is
Page 184 of the.
Oh, okay. I don't have a page number here on this. So it's right after the memo.
But it was space utilization?
Yeah, space utilization study.
If I can find the page, I can.
So if you go after the council memo, do you have the council memo? No, probably not.
Where we're looking at City Hall and Government Center
Right.
layout and sort of.
Looks like this, Steve.
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking, yes. Yeah, that's right. Yes, what we did was, we put that into the current budget for utilizing existing space. And if you remember some time ago, we talked about a study that we were going to ask BKV, one of our umbrella contractors, to come back to do a study on how we can best use that facility. And the council tabled that motion and wanted us to come back and look how we maybe could better spend that money on kind of actually doing the moves. And so what we would do is use some of this money for space utilization, and we're working on that now to actually figure out how we can use that money to do design and construction to better utilize the space we've got. And to be more specific about that is we have space over in the government center that is unused, and we have people crowded here on top of each other. You can barely get into the city clerk's office because she's got piles of stuff there she needs to put someplace else. We'd like to give all of the people over here some more space. We've got the space in the government center. So that is one of the things that we wanted to use that money for, is to actually do that move.
Okay, so it's a move but not a study.
That's what we want to do. And of course, when we do the move, it involves three things. One, you have to do the design work so that you can have a contract-ready blueprints. Then you have to pay for the people to move some things around, some walls and some doors and that sort of thing. And then you actually have to move the people into those locations. So there's three pieces of that. All of that is included in that. But I think we pretty well know what it is we want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Black.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve, for the presentation. Alderman Millawambre hit on the space utilization that we had talked about before, and that's something that I'm cautious about, because if we do a study and it determines that this department moves here and this person goes there, there's still going to be kind of that consternation from some of the staff and some of the concern that we may not be able to do some of those moves. So I'd hate to just see that report come back, and maybe I'm misunderstanding what it might be, because you talk a little bit more about the construction piece and kind of the logistics of that, which is a lot more in depth and is obviously needed, but I hope that we can make those decisions and stick to them.
We'll work on that. We've talked about that even just today.
Oh, great, yeah. Um, and I'm just reminded of a conversation we had here very recently about the police firing range and how we all lamented and how did we get to this situation, and funding facilities is not something that is really perceived as the most interesting thing that we do. You'll hear people talk about how that money could be better spent in roads and what other priorities might be out there. But one of my goals is to be consistent throughout, and I was concerned about the state at which the police firing range was, and so my goal is to fund this appropriately, and I hope that my colleagues will join me in that.
Yes, and something like the police firing range had fallen apart because of neglect over the years. One of the things that we can do is, if we get that to where it's usable and it becomes a regional facility, we begin to make money back on it, because then other municipalities who don't have one can come and use it. But right now, it's very difficult for us to charge them money to use something that is in a terrible state of disrepair. So that's one of the ones where we have to kind of spend some money to make some money.
Absolutely, and I just use that one to highlight kind of the conversation that we had up here about that whole
Sure.
situation and the importance of funding it. And from where I sit too, we talk a lot about collaboration and some of these high-level policy decisions, and I'm really hoping that as we do this master plan, as it comes back to us in the coming months, some of these questions of, like, do we get out of the business of the Lincoln Leisure Center, are asked to us. Because if we're going to continue to spend money on boilers and such, that's a decision that we have to make. And if we have to cut ties, we have to cut ties with the facility. And I think that's something that's a pro and con discussion that may be best served in a committee of the whole conversation, because there's obviously costs and such that's associated with it. And one of the things I've talked about before is I've always loved to see a new city hall library combination building. While expensive, could be the model of the 21st century in terms of how we can integrate technology, the community, and those sorts of things. And there's a big cost to that, and then people will quibble about the state of when's the best time to make that happen. But if we're going to be making major investments in emergency repairs and in generators and such, perhaps we should just bite the bullet, make a big decision, and move forward and address some of these issues in the long term. That's more my musings. My last point is that
That's exactly right. We can only keep what we can maintain, or it all go the way of the old police firing range.
Yeah, and exactly. And we talk up here very, very positively about collaboration and supportive of it, and we'll look into it. This is another pitch for my joint meetings where we put on the calendar, have the meeting where we talk to Normal about what does a joint public works facility look like, what are the pros and cons, how much is it going to cost, aquatics facility, sports complex, take your pick. Those are the things that I think if we institutionalize it, those conversations actually happen, the public's involved, and we get a better decision at the end of the day. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Fruin.
Scott, very good points, and I appreciate the other comments too about space utilization and where we can gain some efficiencies. A couple things come to mind, and maybe sometimes we got to re-examine past ideas. One of them, Steve, I think, is utilization of this space, the council chambers that we're in, and the fishbowl. I don't know what percentage of the day are these rooms used. Might be 10%. I don't know what it is, but we could easily move our meetings over to the government center, McLean County Boardroom. I think that's met with resistance in the past, but it's a new idea. Take a fresh look at it.
I've asked that question with the county, and I meet with them frequently, and I'll bring that up again. There's a lot of merit to it, but it hasn't met with a lot of warm reception from the county so far.
Yeah.
But I'll continue to press forward on that.
Well, I won't speak for David either, but I just think some of our city staff have had reservations about it, and people running back and forth, a block away and so forth. But, I'm thinking of the subdivision at the northwest corner of Tawanda Barnes and Fort Jesse. Very small, big development, but hadn't taken off yet. It's in the county. It's not annexed to Normal, but they have to go through the town of Normal for their building permits. So I just wonder how many scenarios are out there where people are going to two or more governmental groups to get their work done. So obviously we share a lot of things with the county, but I just wonder if Normal could be a part of Government Center in any capacity. So anyway, I'm sure staff has a lot of ideas, and let's hope we can utilize our space the best we can.
I will make sure that finds its way into our discussions for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And what you've all said here is the exact issue. If you look up at 2018, there's $2,780,000 just to stay where we are. But if we had a same budget that we've had before, there's only $900,000 in it. So what we owe you is a breakdown of what the priority of those things is, and then you can decide how much money you want to put to these, and we'll tell you what the need is on those facilities.
Right.
And we owe that back to you.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Sobering update, but necessary. Yes. At this point, Mr. Hales, City Manager, discussion.
Thank you. I just, two things. One, I know Alderman Schmidt mentioned how great the downtown looks. Steve was sharing with me some of the specifics. He's going to send you an email of just what our parks crews have done, Bobby Mays and others, and it's very impressive, some of the data and the specifics as to what they added to the downtown this past year. So look for that. I had to take in the last meeting as I was going home, drive through the downtown and look at it at nighttime, but it looks fantastic, and you'll see some of the specific numbers of what they've been able to do this past year. So with that, as you know, I think there is just a reminder, Cherry Lawson has been working on a special meeting on just a single item liquor commission liquor license issue here. I think it's after Christmas coming up, but other than that, just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and appreciate all the work of our crews, the Public Works and everyone on the salt trucks did a great job this last weekend. We're hoping they are utilizing a lot of the salt out there by the big dome. That's going down and things like that. But anyway, our police and fire are doing a great job during these cold temperatures and other needs. So thank you very much and happy holidays.
Thank you. And actually, you stole part of my thunder. I was going to say how great downtown was, and also thanking Marlene Greger, who came to me a year and some ago and said, hey, can't we do something more? And she showed me different kinds of lighting, and we got Steve Rasmussen involved. And anyway, it certainly does look, it's a downtown that we can all be proud of, but we can particularly be proud of it at this time of year. I also want to just wish everyone Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. And start, Jim?
Thanks, Mayor. And you're exactly right. Everybody has worked hard. A lot of people worked hard at downtowns, come a long ways. So maybe in spring or summer, maybe somebody will pick up the idea of maybe a temporary ice rink next winter. Peoria has done well with it, and I think you can get private enterprise or, make that happen. Maybe the coachman, a lot of options there. I hope this council will discuss that. This is a second food for thought that I want to share with everybody, and I'm not revisiting any of our recent votes, but I think they'll demonstrate something. Let me just share 4 recent votes, and I talked briefly with Johnny and Scott on a couple of them. We had the recent vote on the traffic signals on Hershey. That was 4-3. We agreed, rightfully so, that we'd like to postpone the substation until the end of January when Scott will be here. We agreed on that. Uh, Think back a month ago, we made a revision to our TIF on North Main Street, and the vote was 5-1. Had that been 4-2, that would not have been approved. Had that been 4-2, that would not have been approved. And going back into the history books, at times we've had a situation where a petitioner or somebody would come to the council meeting and ask, can we postpone this until a future meeting? Maybe because somebody was or was not here. And that was more likely when there's 8 people up here and there might be a potential tie. Where I'm going with this is I think we need to be cognizant of how many people we have at the table when we do have a vote, because a vote could be different depending on who was here and who wasn't here. And I think we also need to have a common understanding among ourselves that if we have a particular alderman that may be absent from something that might be important to them or they're involved with, I think we owe them the respect of making sure that they're here for that particular meeting. So I'm not second guessing any of these decisions. I'm not trying to revisit them, but I think we could have had a hiccup on that 4-2 vote for that TIF revision and would be saying, how did this happen? Had we postponed that another meeting when we had more people here, that could have been a 7-2 or something like that. So again, where will this go? Will it fall off the table? I don't know, but someday it has potential to come back and bite us when we're down a person or two and something doesn't go the way it would if we had a full council. So food for thought if anybody wants to talk about it at the retreat or some other time.
Alderwoman Schmidt.
First of all, a shout out to the city IT and Scott and Craig and our new website. I know it's still a work in progress, but I really like the way it's parsed out and speaks to visitors and residents and doing business and that kind of thing. Looks really great.
And Karen, if I could, Craig Macbeth in the back is the one who's done the heavy lifting on
Great
that.
job,
So
Craig.
he's here tonight sitting in from Scott, who's ill.
And then also, David, could you just give us an update on where we are with the audit for John M. Scott? I think we've agreed we're doing an operational and financial audit, and I know I think I had turned in an alderman's request with our hats on as the trustees for the Scott Commission.
Yeah, and we did, we're utilizing the Bronner Group, and they are proceeding with and I'll call it both a financial audit, looking at revenues and expenditures from the J.M. Scott Trust, but also they are utilizing someone to help look at how can, for part of an organizational assessment, as you've asked, what might be the better options to consider going forward in utilizing those dollars? How can we be as efficient, effective, especially with the changing nature of federal law vis-a-vis Affordable Care Act, things of that nature? They are now engaged. What I just can't recall is how long it was going to take to complete that audit, but when that's completed, it'll come back to you for your review and consideration, and look for an opportunity to have the Bronner Group be here for that presentation.
They've started then? They've started this work?
They should have. I signed the memorandum to get them started, and I think that was in this last week or two. They did develop a scope of work, and there was some of that analysis and review, but yeah, so if they haven't started, they've been given the green light to begin.
Okay, and then they will be working, excuse me, with our township supervisor and also
Yes.
the Scott Commission itself?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Both. Mm-hmm.
Alderman Sage and then Lowry.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just go back to the situation that we had at the beginning of the meeting with public comment. And I know we were all caught off guard on that. And I'm wondering, I'm going to make a suggestion. Is it possible, I don't believe that we have any verbiage on our agenda template around public comment saying you fill out a card, you have to submit that before the meeting starts in order to do that. It seems to me that I would think it would take about less than 5 minutes to just put some verbiage on our agenda template to spell out how that process works?
Is that,
Because
Terry, not hard for us to do?
yeah, I would hate for us to get into a situation where it would appear that we're allowing some to speak and perhaps not others, reality perception, whatever that would be. Well, I would think, like I said, a few minutes on, that's something that just is part of our agenda boilerplate going forward. And because again, we work hard at being, we are intentional about trying to accommodate those folks coming for public comment. And the simpler we can make that and the more easily understood for people before they get here, I think we're ahead of the game if we do that. So maybe that first agenda in January, we could have that
I
be on
think
there.
that's an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alderman Lau.
Just a word to remember during the holidays. Number one, stay safe out there. Big travel holiday, actually two coming up. And mindful of the fact that we do have a 24/7 operation here, and we've got employees that actually have young families, many of them. Our police, our fire, our water, with these cold temperatures, and Public Works. So thanks to all of them and the hard work that they have to put in 24/7, 365, and that includes Christmas. And so having worked 24/7, 365 operation, the wife currently does work for one with the hospital. And so we just have to remember many of us have 9 to 5 positions, and things continue to happen day in, day out, and the people that are making that happen are on call and on the job. Thanks.
Thank you. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt, second by Alderman Black. All in favor signify by saying aye. We're adjourned.